All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the May meeting of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Folks on Zoom, by which I think I just mean Nick, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi.
Amazing, thank you. And so for the record, we have myself, Veronica Pillar, Lisa Holmes, Rachel Graham, Travis Brooks, in chambers, Nick Bennett on Zoom. We do not have quorum right now, so we can't make any official decisions, but that is not a huge deal. We will start in with welcome in our discussions. I don't know if people want to do any sort of welcome or introductions. I think for once everyone here knows each other. Which hasn't happened in ever, a long time. So, changes to the agenda. Change is going to be, okay, Kate Chinks-Booth is here. Let's postpone minutes approval to the end, I guess, after the discussion items, in hopes that we'll have enough folks to vote on that. Chair's report. I do not have a chair's report. And so I think we can go, we're just like zooming through everything. We can go into reports and updates. First, standing report from our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, but she is on vacation right now. So we're skipping that also. And moving on to the team Justice, Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, AKA JEDI update. Rachel.
And JEDI did not meet when we were supposed to last, so I don't have an update there. We're working on putting together a reading and discussion group. I'm having trouble getting enough volunteers to facilitate those, so planning them is taking longer until we can identify those facilitators to schedule when those will take place. So hopefully by next month I'll have a better update on that.
Can you say more about that, maybe to remind me, but also others, what is the reading or readings and who's participating or going to be invited to participate, or how do people find out?
So the curriculum is developed. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't give you specifics, but it's not just one book. It's like excerpts from books, it's some poetry, it's a bunch of different things, some articles too, some scholarly articles, and just to generate discussion and have some good conversations with folks. And it's going to be 5 sessions, 1 per month. So it'll be like a 5-month program. And yeah, that's all I have on it right now.
And is it for county employees?
Yeah,
only
county employees.
Yeah. Is it for any county employee who wants to?
Yep. So we'll invite legislators and all county employees that want to participate. It'll be volunteer, whoever wants to.
Okay.
And we're hoping that it will be JEDI members that facilitate those conversations. So far, we have one person that volunteered, and then I said I would, Charlene said she would, Ken said he would, so we still need one more person to facilitate, and then we should be able to get into planning.
Okay, awesome. Any questions about reading groups or Team JEDI in general for Rachel? If no, I have a question that might not be about that. A book about racial healing, something, appeared on top of our mailboxes here in Chambers. It looks interesting, but where did that come from and who's it for, if you know?
This came from Shauna Black. She dropped it off after strategic operations and planning stuff, I believe it was. Yes.
Yeah.
She said it's for anyone who would like it.
Okay. All right. Brittany says Shauna Black dropped this off after some strategic operations planning meetings, and it is for anyone who would like it. The Racial Healing Handbook. I don't want to steal the only copy, but I will look into it, but not right this moment. All right. Anything else for Jedi? Moving right along. Discussion items. Oh, right, we are going to zip through these, maybe unfortunately. The proposed June proclamations. So I know I've been doing a bad job of planning for proclamations in advance and would like to do better. Well, they're not both months. Two things that are celebrated in June that this committee has habitually brought forward recognition of are Juneteenth and LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And if in the agenda packet is just the copies of the proclamations from last year, and I think it would be great to have at least a proclamation again for each of these this year. And if we want it to be read at the first full legislature meeting in June, it would need to be done and finalized by Tuesday next week, which means it really should go out to legislators for review this week, like as soon as possible. So I am wondering if anybody wants to volunteer to work on editing and going over these. And I know I'm like 98% sure that Charlene, our Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, wants us to do this as well. I think she gets back from vacation tomorrow, but was that true?
Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, with our powers combined, we can count days.
We'd need it by when for review before?
I think it depends on your definition of adequate time for review, which is a phrase in the legislature notes. Katrina?
Just because Monday being a holiday, Friday afternoon, I will get it out to legislators over the weekend and see if they can get back to me by 8 on Tuesday.
Okay,
That will work.
awesome.
Friday.
By Friday afternoon, this Friday. Ooh, Kate?
Yeah, I don't mind, I can take a look at the LGBTQ one, but I was just curious, is there, what's the protocol in reusing proclamations? If it was a good proclamation, can we just use it again, or, I mean, it should probably still be reviewed, but just curious.
We reuse them a lot, but generally, usually they will each one will mention, at minimum it needs the year updated, because often they'll refer to 2023. I know some of them, possibly not these, but some heritage months have a theme that's put out by some larger organizations. So, for example, we just kind of hastily presented an Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander month proclamation, and that one was basically the same as the previous years, except that the date was updated and the theme was updated. And in that particular case, when I went looking for what is this year's theme, I found that at least our federal government and an association, I think of also federal employees that I cannot remember the name of right now, was explicitly naming Native Hawaiians in that, in the way that they were talking about this group and recognizing that heritage, so noting that, we added that in because that was a change. So I guess if things like that jump out, oh, you know what, this seems to be something important to add or change, or the way people talk about this thing is different in 2024 than it was in 20 whatever when the proclamation first draft was written.
Sure.
That was probably more than you wanted. Rachel?
Yeah, was just going to add that the last proclamation I worked on, I can't remember which one it was now, though, and Charlene had suggested including recognition for local individuals that had done work in that area, so I looked for that to include, so that could be something we might want to incorporate.
Sure, no, I'd be happy to do that for the LGBTQ then.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate.
Yep.
Would anyone else like to help review either or both proclamations, or have other thoughts or comments while we're on this topic? Juneteenth. If we want them to be presented at the first June meeting.
I can take a stab at the Juneteenth proclamation.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. I guess what is the date of the second June legislature meeting? June 18th, okay. And Juneteenth is the 19th, so it could be good to proclaim it at the first meeting.
Yeah.
Last year we proclaimed it on the 20th, so we're definitely going to do better than that.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else on this? And I'm happy to look over either too, or at least start an email thread with a document with each of you and Charlene for tomorrow morning anyway.
Okay.
All right, next discussion topic was, I've lost my agenda, but it was Juneteenth, celebrations and programming. And I do wish Dr. Clark was here for this discussion, but he is not. But yeah, or that Charlene was here. Does anyone know anything about what the county is doing or should be doing?
For Juneteenth?
For Juneteenth. I'll confess I didn't personally do my homework for this.
So I'm on that committee. I did miss their last meeting, which was just the other day. And I haven't looked at the minutes that went out yet because I just got back into town last night. But I know that they have, I wish I brought my notes with me on that. They have a speaker identified. They have, they're doing it with Southside again, so they're promoting Southside's event. They're doing the Black Business Expo with business leaders of colors again. And there's a group from Rochester that's doing a reenactment or something like that about what it was like, I think that first when it was declared Juneteenth. So I don't know the name of that group though, but last I knew they were scheduled, and it's going to be, I want to say, I shouldn't say the dates because I don't have them in front of me, but there's going to be, I think, 3 or 4 days of events happening. And I know they're working on a save the date that should be going out soon for all county employees.
Awesome, thank you for that update. Nick?
There we go, unmuted. I just did a really quick search, and it looks like the Southside event is all day on June 15th this year. And I went on the county and the city's websites, and I can't find anything specific. I found something from last year and from 2022, but nothing. It's kind of hard to find anything specific. I bet if I was on Facebook or something like that, there would be event postings, but otherwise, Visit Ithaca and Southside have the information for the Southside event.
Dominic just sent me the flyer that Office of Human Rights is sending out. Please come and join us Wednesday, June 19th from 11 to 3, Southside Community Center, Black Business Expo, historical reenactment of the first Juneteenth celebration in 1865, community lunch and keynote speaker, Dakota Jones, the CEO of Vera House in Syracuse, sponsored by Tompkins County, City of Ithaca, Business Leaders of Colors, Southside Community Center, and the Community Foundation.
Fantastic, thank you. And it sounds like if we typically get save the dates for events from our own Office of Human Rights, should we expect to get one for these Juneteenth events similarly? Fantastic. Travis, did you raise your hand or am I hallucinating that? Okay. Anything else on this topic? All right, moving along swiftly to our main thing, discussion of the climate survey results and update. So for anyone who hasn't been following along, Tompkins County did a workplace climate survey, anonymously surveying employees back in 2018, compiled their results, have done a lot of work on making and enacting recommendations from that, and it is now 2024 and time to look at or get back up to speed on what was found and what has been done, and start to think about planning for our next climate survey, which is going to be done next year in 2025. And we've talked some about that, and one thing we realized, I mean, some of the people here were intimately involved in the administration and implementation of recommendations from the 2018 climate survey, and some of us knew nothing about the county government as an organization at that time. But our county administrator, Lisa, has been here for a long time and is gonna take us back to 2018 and up to almost the present, I think, and then we can branch out into a discussion.
Thanks, Veronica, and I'm going to share my screen and hopefully the correct document. Let's see. Great. This is the document that you all should have in your, it was included in the packet for today's meeting. Yeah, I've been here for many a climate survey, and involved in different components of each one. So for today, I'm just going to go over the 2018 climate survey, how it was implemented, kind of an overview of the questions that were asked and how they compared to the previous survey that was conducted in 2015, but then really how the results drove the follow-up actions that were taken to improve in several of the key areas that were found in need of improvement. And just to acknowledge, a lot has changed since then. There was a global pandemic since the last time we looked at these survey results. So, and our workforce, there's been a lot of turnover in our workforce and retirements and so forth. So this was true then, and a lot has happened in the meantime. So let me see. Move through this. So the survey objectives were really to gain an understanding of the workplace climate and see where we could improve, see where we had improved since 2015 and where we could still use improvement, and really just improve our workplace overall. Something of note that the same questions were asked more or less in the 2018 survey as were asked in the 2015 survey to compare results, which was valuable. Our process, it's important to note that each time we've conducted a climate survey, we haven't had any one department with staff that were to handle all of the aspects of the survey implementation and follow-up. The past 2 climate surveys, we've utilized a subcontractor to implement the survey. There's been a designated lead or point person, and then the responsibilities have dispersed across the organization with teams assigned to assist. So in 2018, Amy Hendricks was the point person who handled the survey, and I owe this presentation to Amy. I was able to dig this up and could just utilize it today. We utilized a leadership team who made executive decisions about the implementation of the survey itself, and that leadership team included Amy, the county administrator at that time, Jason Molino, the HR commissioner, and the then chair of the legislature and chair of WDIC. The survey development team included Amy as the lead, and myself and a couple of department heads, a rep from HR, and again, the chair of the legislature and the chair from WDIC. And then the education and outreach team included staff and department heads from a wide array of departments across the organization. And we utilized Kaleidoscope Group, we subcontracted with them. They're a Black-owned business out of Chicago to implement the survey in 2018. They were used in 2015 as well. And then the results were tabulated by an independent third-party subcontractor to Kaleidoscope. This is how the survey was administered. Employees were able to complete the surveys either online or via paper. Some were more comfortable doing via paper. The education and outreach team invested a lot of time discussing the importance of the survey with departments, talked it up a lot, which we think yielded a higher response rate. In 2018, we had a 70% response rate. We had a 62% response rate in 2015, so that helped. They also provided stamped envelopes in 2018 for the paper surveys. The survey is divided into 8 categories and with over 58 questions. And you can see the categories were professional development, accountability, communication, commitment to the organization, diversity, inclusiveness, leadership effectiveness, and work satisfaction. And then what we saw overall in 2018 were very positive increases between 2015 and 2018. People reported being pleased to work for the county and continue to want to improve the workplace. What was interesting was, people either really rated things high or low without a lot of middle range. They either really liked things or really disliked things, and this was pointed out by Kaleidoscope Group as somewhat unusual in surveys. And then there were clear areas that were seen as opportunities for growth around performance evaluations, communication, preferential treatment given by supervisors, accountability. And then there were some departments with scores consistently lower than others in both 2015 and 2018, pointing to possible morale issues and other issues around leadership and supervision. Okay. So just going through the results themselves briefly here. In the category and the questions, you can see the questions that were asked under each category. And this is the first category, opportunities for professional development. Again, overall, what we saw across almost every question, the exception of a few, that there was improvement between 2015 and 2018. The questions that were highlighted in this red box are where the responses within the category that received the lowest marks in the category, even if they improved from 2015 to 2018, they were still among the lowest. So in this slide, we see in 2018, employees expressed that there was a high desire to grow their career. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. That there was
While you're thinking, do you want questions as you go or at the end?
if you have questions about a particular slide, feel free to ask them.
I have questions, I realized, about the, I guess, the format of the responses. Like, in what way were people responding? Were they given like 3 choices of favorable, neutral, unfavorable? And then I guess same question for 2015.
Yeah.
Like, what does that number come from?
Yeah, they were all phrased in the same way. And so the statement would be, the county's hiring practices are fair. And then the response would be, strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And what I was thinking was, as a follow-up to this, you know, in another meeting, if we wanted to continue to delve into this, we could provide the survey instrument itself. It was just adding up to be a whole lot to include in one packet, but we could provide the survey instrument itself and look through the questions to see, you know, if there are any that we would want to change. So you can see.
Sorry, can I ask a follow-up on that? So if I'm looking at like that top line, the county's hiring practices are fair, does that mean that 66% of people who responded picked either agree or strongly agree?
Right.
And 9% picked neutral and 24% picked disagree or strongly disagree?
That's right.
And then what does the 63 mean from 2015?
That is the favorable score. So it was 63% in 2015, 66% in 2018.
Okay, thank you.
So, in these results, we're seeing that performance evaluations that provide employees with feedback that allow them to grow their career and improve their performance seems that this time it was sought by employees, and many of them weren't getting them, as evidenced by the responses here in this section. Accountability. Again, we saw a lot of great improvement across most of these categories, and the area where we scored the lowest here was with the question, everyone in my department is held accountable to the same standards. And it gets at fairness and preferential treatment. And while there was improvement from 2015 to 2018, that improvement still left a lot to be desired. And then there are 3 questions that on this slide get cut off. The first one, the second one down, the full question is, I believe the county serves the community fairly and equitably, regardless of their race, age, ability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity / expression, religion, or nationality. And then the 2 questions, the 2 final questions down at the bottom, the full text there is, I can report a suspected violation of any law, rule, or regulation, or report inappropriate behavior without fear of reprisal from my coworkers. And then the last one is, I can disclose a suspected violation of any law, rule, or regulation, or report inappropriate behavior without fear of reprisal from my supervisor. So again, improvement in those areas as well. Let's see. The next section is communication. In these areas, again, overall increases across the board with very, very slim neutral scores and very, higher unfavorable or unfavorable, either favorable or unfavorable scores. And so this could have meant that these behaviors were occurring on extreme spectrums. Either people feel like they're being communicated with, or they're not, by the county or by their department head, et cetera. The next one was commitment to the organization. Overall, in 2018, our employees saw themselves as part of Tompkins County and able to grow within the organization, and believe that they had a long-term career in Tompkins County. Oh, sure.
I do have a question.
Sure.
About the numbers. So you have the favorable, neutral, unfavorable, but is there a way to dig deeper into those? So for example, is there a way to tell of the 8 unfavorable, or where are we at, of the 22 unfavorables, how many of them identify in particular groups? So for example, if you had, I'll just use this as an example, if you had 22 women, 21 women in the unfavorable group, that would tell you more? Or is it just 22 people? You can't dig deeper?
So, being that it's a while since we did this, I can't remember to what extent in 2018 we dug deeper into those cross-cutting groups. I remember in 2015 we did, and we had to pay a little extra for Kaleidoscope to do that sort of digging for us, and we did it across, I think, the protected classes. I'm not sure whether we have that for 2018.
The numbers or the ability? The data or the ability to go back and do that?
I would again, I'd have to dig through the what we have on hand in county administration. I didn't see that immediately, and I'm not sure where that raw data sits right now.
Okay.
So, but I do think that in the future, if that's something that we want to do, we could build that in from the start.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I just wanted to say, I think those are percentages, right? So the 22 wasn't 22 people. It
That's
was like 22% of 500, so more like 100 and some.
That's right. Yep.
Which everything else still stands.
Yep, exactly. Okay. Oh, sorry, did I just? Diversity, okay. Diversity was the section that was the strongest reported area in 2018, and people reported overall working well together across various lines of difference: race, sex, gender expression, sexual orientation, age, ability, et cetera, where all of these categories were well over 50%. And very few in the strongly, agree or disagree or strongly disagree unfavorable category. And then inclusiveness, areas of improvement around inclusiveness included inclusiveness in decision-making and preferential treatment of others. And then while 58% noted that discriminatory, biased, or prejudiced behavior was not occurring in our workplace, nearly a third indicated that it may be occurring. So we saw that as something that something to follow up on, for sure. Oops. Oh, sure.
And diversity and inclusiveness, especially inclusiveness for the next survey, I think this is where be able to look at those numbers would be really, really important.
Yes. Thank you. It's a great point. Leadership effectiveness. This question may not have been clear to all participants. I seem to remember this as an area needing clarification in both 2015 and 2018, and we had tried our best to make it clear. But leadership in this context could have meant supervisor, manager, department head, county administration leadership, or elected officials. All may have been perceived as leaders. But these were some of the areas here that were weakest. Were giving clear direction, providing mentorship, addressing inappropriate behaviors in the workplace. Okay, work satisfaction. Again, overall high levels of work satisfaction were reported in 2018. And then improvements and opportunities. The most improved areas in 2018 included areas of inclusiveness, accountability, and communication. The growth was highlighted in an increase of 12 to 15% in favorable responses to these questions since 2015. So, these are the areas where, according to the survey, we had improved the greatest. And then the areas for most improvement are where we had the lowest scores on our survey. And in 2018, there were also areas of room for improvement in our accountability, professional development, and inclusiveness areas. The question that saw a decrease, across the survey was, my performance evaluation provides me with meaningful information and an opportunity to provide my perspective. There was a decrease there. And some people reported not having had a performance evaluation for the entire time they worked for the county. Some had worked for decades without having had that. So I have a couple of other documents to share, but are there any, before I leave this one, are there any other questions?
I have a few. I'll try to be brief. I guess mainly for I know you said we could see the survey tool, so I guess this will answer this, but was there any way for people to put in open-ended responses? Yes. Okay. And then I guess, and also, maybe this answers it, was there guidance given to respondents on what each, like for the strongly agree, maybe this question doesn't make sense. I thought of it when I was thinking of it in terms of favorable and unfavorable, but I don't know, were there elaborated examples of something to tease out, how do you know if this is agree versus neutral or strongly agree versus agree? I've seen surveys with this kind of question pattern all the time that have no further explanation, but also sometimes seen oh, as an example, if you're thinking, then here's some example sentences well, I feel this way, or well, sometimes this, but sometimes that. And an example could be about some completely banal topic.
No examples. It's a pretty text-heavy survey, so I think that so examples like that, we tried to be as clear as possible in the direction and in the questions themselves. And what was helpful, in the 2015 survey, we were able to see which questions people just didn't seem to understand, and we either reworded them or took them out entirely if they just didn't seem like they were relevant or pointing to information that was relevant or that we could use, and improve the questions. So I think we would be able to do that again in 2025, taking a look at the questions. And, language and terminology changes and evolves over time, so we would have the opportunity to do that as well. I think, for instance, that supervisor question, we'd want to take a close look at and see how that's defined. So I think that going through the survey instrument itself would be a useful thing to do.
And you said there was open-ended response?
There were open-ended questions. They're not summarized in this.
Was it separate questions, or was it like optional, please explain, after these particular statements?
They were separate questions. Yep. Anything else, or I can maybe go on to the next document?
I guess I have one more, maybe not a question for you to answer, but one to put out now that I'd love to hear from any, I guess like any county employees, past or present, looking at these survey results, if there's any nagging things coming up, like, yeah, okay, these results look good. I mean, not all of it does, but like, this looks good, but it wouldn't, like, there's this problem that I'm aware of that really wouldn't have come up in that survey. I would be curious to hear about that, or I would want like the survey development team to have that input so it could be asked about. But that might be a thing to mull on.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to see if I can just move on to this next, if the screen share will pick it up. It did. Hey, okay. So then this next document is kind of summarizes the work that came after as a result of the survey. And I'm not going to go through and read everything from this document, but to summarize, after this survey was implemented in 2019 and we received the results, the survey implementation team split into 4 groups to address the areas, the findings that indicated that were in need of most improvement across the organization. And so those 4 groups included a communications team, a diversity, inclusion, infusion team, an engagement team, and a performance evaluation team. And then in the midst of their work, a 5th team emerged, which was the values team, when it was determined that the county as an organization lacked clear values. And you can see in this summary document that was included in the packet, again, I have to give credit to my former colleague, Amy Hendricks, who's Deputy County Administrator, was the point person responsible for steering these efforts, compiling these results, and she did an amazing job on all of it. And she facilitated the amazing efforts of a number of staff throughout the organization who helped to really move the needle forward in a number of areas. So, while we didn't have, a department or a survey group that was like wholly responsible for everything, and that was difficult because people have to fit this work in, it's also incredibly valuable to have the collaboration of staff across our entire organization on these things. And so I see that as a strength. So the highlights of the successes of these efforts include, and I'll just kind of a snapshot, under the communications heading, there were monthly all-staff town halls that started under county administration, I think really as a way of communicating with each other during COVID, but would continue to this day. Monthly, they may have been even weekly back then, but monthly now. There was the launch of the siren system for emergency communications. We also hired a communications director, Dominic, who shepherds a lot of these activities through his efforts now. And under diversity, inclusion, infusion, some of the successes involved the counties joining GARE, the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which has provided our organization with any number of training opportunities, networking opportunities, conferences, and best practices. The recommendation and ultimately the creation of the Chief Equity Diversity Officer position, and the formation of Team JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion as the county's core equity team. Under employee engagement, this team helped to revamp employee onboarding in HR and created a pilot program for departmental onboarding. And this team created and implemented a check-in survey in 2021 to survey our employees' experiences in the middle of the pandemic. And so much was going on at that time, I'd even forgotten that that took place. And I came across that, the summary of that this morning. I didn't include it in the packet, but I have it here to share. It's very, it's just a 2-page document, but I'd like to share it when we get through with this. So that was under employee engagement. Under the performance evaluation team, they developed standard performance evaluation tools, which were later used by county admin and HR to update and implement the organization-wide performance evaluation policy. So that team did great work to help with those tools. And then the values team, as a result of their work and surveying of employees and reach out, the county adopted organization-wide values of integrity, accountability, respect, and equity. So, a lot was done across all of these areas. I mean, this is a very high-level summation of a few years of very hard work on behalf of all of these teams. And I think Rachel, Nick, and Kate may have had some direct involvement in this, so I defer to you guys if you have anything more you want to add on any of this.
Just want to say the last page of the document, I think if you didn't say it, lists the people who were on each of these teams. Some of my favorite people are on that list, so thanks to all of them.
Yes.
Which includes Rachel and Kate. And I know Nick did work a bit later than this.
Okay. So, and then I'd just really quickly like to jump to this employee check-in survey that was done in 2021 in the midst of the pandemic. And, okay, I think my luck ran out, so I'm going to stop the share and start again. Not sure why it's showing a blank document. I'm going to take one quick second and try to figure that out.
Take your time. Anyone have questions or quick comments in the meantime?
I don't want to distract Lisa while she's working on that.
Sure. That's why I said quick. And then we'll open up for a discussion.
Looking for the check-in survey. I can't pull it up from where I. Very sorry. I don't know what's.
There is one other additional related document we had in our agenda packet.
Yes.
Would you want us to like hop to that and then come back?
Good, for sure. Did you want me
Okay.
to put it up on share screen or?
Yeah. Can you do that while looking for the other thing? Because
I can definitely share it. I may not be able to look for the other at the same time, but that's okay. And I can just actually give you guys just a verbal update on what's included in the other survey and share it at another time. Okay.
So the other document is I guess, well, here we go, an annotated summary of the part of what Lisa just shared, but of the like recommendations and things that happened after the 2018 climate survey, but it's specifically focused on things that as of spring 2022 were still remained or were further recommendations, like things to do in the future, as opposed to those that had already been done. And there were a few notes from the subcommittee added on here. Nick, you're one of the people who put this together, so I don't know if you would like to talk about it. Transparency moment, I didn't ask him in advance, so feel free to say no. What do you think? I can't really see you.
It's been a little while since I did this, but I can say that it was the reason we put this together. This was the Access and Equity Subcommittee of JEDI, was that kind of similar to what we've been experiencing in WDIC for the past few months with a lot of questions from JEDI members, from various community members, kind of like with the turnover, but also just with like people getting busy and forgetting things or not like knowing where to look, was that we were getting a lot of questions of like, well, what did improve? What still needs to be worked on? And so we were asked to go through and kind of look with that access and equity specific lens. So that's the A and E note. That's what that stands for, access and equity. That's what we would call ourselves. But yeah, it's been a hot second here, but oh yeah, okay. There were a number of things our subcommittee, I mean, at the time when this was put together, maybe 3 or 4 active members of the subcommittee, so not very large, but 2 of those folks, not including myself, had been with the county for a much longer time and remembered doing the work of the last climate survey. And so a number of these notes staff hired in 2022 do not recall being surveyed as new hires. Some of those notes are like very specific to kind of looking at even the differences in, I guess, like onboarding and like really, really positive changes. And then a big thing that I'm kind of remembering just looking at this was that like particularly up top here, human resources will regularly survey newly hired employees, things that were like really kind of good ideas that seemed really interesting and like would be really helpful. And, you know, mentioning things like ideas to increase networking interdepartmental networking and positive like senses of belonging were big sort of takeaways here. And so we were like coming up with ideas based on things that the county already was doing, or at least in kind of the interesting comparison was like of the four of us that were in this committee at the time, half of us were aware or experienced some of these things that had occurred in the past, and they had really interesting feedback and ideas. And then the two of us that were newer, like, oh, that really works, or I can see why we don't do this anymore. Maybe we should implement some of these older ideas. And so a lot of like, just a lot of that collaboration. But I think looking at this now, and something that I think I had brought up last meeting, that I'm just gonna like throw out one more time, is having a hub like on our website where some kind of summary, better, like more readable than this, than this report. This was mainly meant as a very, very brief report. I was told to keep it to one page, and it's kind of impossible for me. And there was so much content. There was really, really solid content that needed, that was worthy of putting on the page. So anyway, yeah, I think one thing that I would love to see and would help in the future is having some kind of hub where we can look back on really these improvements and look back on the results and responses from the past surveys. I think is really necessary.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I think, and thanks for expounding on that without preparation. One of the things you mentioned, especially these notes of like the staff hired in 2022, don't recall. I see the new hire buddy system and regular surveys from HR of newly hired employees, that y'all didn't recall that either. That stood out to me and was one reason I wanted to bring that forward, to sort of, like, we heard about what happened between 2018 and early 2022. And then, so it's an important note of like, oh, did these things drop? Should we bring them back? And then I guess a couple other things I'm noting of like things we could do more in here. You've noted increased employee participation in GARE initiatives, Government Alliance and Race and Equity. Lisa mentioned this before, and I think that's a good point, because I don't know what proportion of our workforce even knows like what GARE is or how to engage with it. I would imagine it's quite low, and I do not off the top of my head know like what would be appropriate avenues for engagement, but like we're a member, we should use that. And I'm also, it's only standing out to me now, maybe because Nick mentioned, but the note about informal employee networking opportunities. So like the summer employee picnic, but smaller things. I think just last night we did pass a food policy that says departments can't pay for ice cream at an ice cream social with county funds, if I'm understanding that correctly. But that's not a but. That doesn't mean there's not some way to make informal employee networking happen. And I also, maybe we don't need to spend time in it, but it was also nice to see some of these recommendations that were like, oh, we have done that now, or are like most of the way through the process of doing it. like creating the organizational mission and vision statement or hiring a chief equity and diversity officer. Yeah. Anything else in this document before we go back to Lisa?
I would just say to ways of promoting more informal communication between and among employees from different departments is something that always seems to be the perennial question, that we're a large organization, but we work in different buildings and different silos, and how can we operate as one county organization, and how can we foster that kind of communication and belonging. And one of many ways is, I think we will be hopefully able to see some fruits of with our new website and our new an employee intranet, which will be a way of sharing information between and among departments as well. It's not the be all and the end all, but it's certainly one way of fostering that.
Awesome, thanks. Someone once brought up the idea to me of like, what if employees from one department could go shadow employees in another department for a whole day? I don't remember whose idea that was. It might have been in this committee. No idea how implementable that is, but it sounds cool.
I love that idea.
All right, Lisa, did you find the check-in thing?
I sure did, and so this will be my last screen share of the day. Let's see. And it's just got such nice graphics, I thought. Again, this is the employee engagement team worked to put this out. It was really a check-in survey for our departments in the midst of the COVID pandemic, when a lot of our departments were remote and working under COVID-related restrictions, and we wanted to see how our employees were faring. So we had a 45% response rate with this and just a 17-question survey. And this was in February of 2021. And so this just sent me back to that point in time. But basically, employees reported that their work had changed as a result of COVID, with 51% reporting increased stress, but 45% reporting greater flexibility, 43% reporting remote work, and 25% that reported that they were working increased hours as a result of COVID. You can see a lot of support were reported by, that employees were receiving a lot of support from their supervisors and coworkers. They felt very much supported there. The county was offering supports to minimize stress and providing tools for employees to do their jobs. And then this next page, we can see that satisfaction with communication with colleagues, 88% agreed or strongly agreed. Satisfaction with communication with supervisors, 85% agreed or strongly agreed. Satisfied with communications with their department head, 81% agreed or strongly agreed. And satisfied with communications with county administration, 89% agreed. And 80% felt that they were doing well or very well in their current work environments. And we had the names of the folks on that team that worked to put together this survey, and then some recommendations for that period of time, in very small print here, but that we could be doing to continue to support or better support our employees at that time. So it wasn't a full-fledged climate survey, but this was a nice touch point at that time to see how our employees were faring. And I'd be happy to send this to you because I didn't have it in time to include in the packet.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, I'd love to have it by email to read those recommendations at the time.
Lisa, would you mind repeating when this specific report that you're looking at, when was this made?
Well, the survey was distributed for 2 weeks in February 2021.
I see now at the top, thank you.
Yep, sure. Yeah, I went back to check for myself.
It's such a cool relic, honestly, with us, for the most part, many of us kind of going back to pre-pandemic work ways. It's so fascinating and I think really useful, beyond just looking at it from the lens of the pandemic. Yeah, I just appreciate this, so thank you for sharing.
Yes, I was kind of heartened by it too, because it reminded me of a sense of solidarity, or that we were really doing a lot to care for one another at that time, and that seemed reflected in this. I mean, no doubt our employees, as everyone, were under a lot of stress at work and at home, but this also showed what we were doing to help each other, and that was nice to see.
I think also the fact that you did that survey matters. I mean, I wasn't part of this workplace then, but like, I, as an employee of another organization, would have loved to just have these things asked of me and reported.
Mm-hmm. And that's, again, thanks to our employee engagement team that took it upon themselves to recommend that we do this. And we can see their names here: Samantha Almendinger, Jill Baldwin, Matt Gray, Amy Hendricks, Irene Keogh, Jerry Lockwood, Jana Thibodeau, and Larry Workman, many of whom are still with us. So, okay, I'll stop the share.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that document specifically? Before we dive into a broader discussion, Annie Corman is on Zoom now, which means that we do now have a quorum, yes. So would it be okay with you if we take a little break from this topic to approve the minutes of last meeting? Because I know she might not be able to stay. All right. Seeing no objections, would anyone like to move the minutes of our April 24th meeting? Rachel moves, Travis seconds. Any discussion or edits? Let us vote. We'll do a roll call because folks are on Zoom, but I'll start in the room. Lisa?
Yes.
Rachel?
Yes.
Travis?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Nick?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So those are approved. Thank you all. All right, back to climate surveys. I think we've presented all our documents, so now I think we can open it up into a broader discussion. Anything anyone wants to say, looking back at the present, or ideas for the future. We're not gonna be like designing the 2025 climate survey right now, but brainstorming things you'd wanna see in it would be good. I know Charlene said that would be helpful to get some of that out of this. Travis?
Lisa, this is a three-part question. They all kind of relate. What would you say, initiative-wise, from the 18 survey has been the most impactful institutional change that you all have been able to accomplish? That's one, and then I'll ask the other two after.
That's a great question. It's hard to point to one, but I'll point to a number. I think hiring a chief equity diversity officer, creating that position and hiring has been very helpful and impactful. and someone who, having people in that role that have that particular expertise and can provide guidance and also leadership in that area. The work done around performance evaluation had been circled around and talked about for years. And for a variety of reasons, staff turnover, we'd get so far with an instrument and we couldn't agree on one instrument that would be useful across the organization. So having the team and the right people in place to bring that across the finish line, I think that really points to a lot of best practices around employee retention, and then having staff in HR, particularly Ruby under her leadership, to provide the training to supervisors as to how to conduct a performance evaluation that is meaningful and useful for supervisors. So that kind of development. And then again, on county administration side, after the first year of doing it, making sure that there's an accountability piece with department heads that they have the mechanisms in place so that all of their employees are now getting them, and that is a continued dialogue and work in progress. So that piece has been really important. Another area that happened, and we wouldn't point to it in any of these engagement teams, but happened behind the scenes, but very much was important, was the follow-up by county administration with those departments that had consistently low scores in 2015 and 2018 that pointed to some other issues that needed addressing in the departments, and having those drilling in deeper, having, in some cases, difficult conversations, and ensuring some accountability there. That was very meaningful as well. So those are the kind of the three areas that jump to mind. But then I also want to credit, the values piece, that these work groups were a step ahead in pointing to the need for organizational values that were largely adopted, and just one additional was created when we did the organization-wide strategic plan. So those values really stand firm as the organizational values that we want to espouse.
The next two have to do with how this committee can support, right? So what are one or two or few initiatives that were started, and whether it was turnover, other projects, the pandemic, a variety of things could have happened that never really got to where you would like them to go, and how can we revisit them and support those? And then lastly, what are a few that didn't get started that you would like to see happen? And how can this committee support?
I love those questions. I think in every area is still a work in progress. And so, and I'm looking at kind of where we left off and the what's next document. I think there's still cracking the code around communication and engagement between departments is something that employees say that they very much want, cross-departmental, engagement. And we don't really have a mechanism in place for that. Maybe affinity groups within the organization, or in conjunction with larger other organizations, maybe the we had, I know, the employee onboarding, it's really easy to work with HR and hone and refine and change up employee onboarding in HR, but because it's a kind of a one-day process and experience. But then once the new employees move on from that to their 28 different departments, it's a varied experience about their employee onboarding. So following up on some of those recommendations from those teams about a buddy, the buddy system, and assigning everyone a buddy so that when they come on their first day at county administration, their buddy has already contacted them. They're going to meet them, take them to lunch and check in with them, that sort of thing. Those are the things that come to mind right away. And I also think that some of the training pieces that lead to employee satisfaction and retention really have to do with a wide variety of training, but training around supervisory training, DEI training across many different components of DEI, and making sure that we have a structure in place. And I know that myself, Charlene, Ruby, and others are working to build that structure, but so that it's not that we make a big effort to do it once and then it falls away, but that it is there and kind of a part of how we do business. So those are the things that come to mind for me. And then if others have other ideas, I'd love to hear them. And then I'm going to ponder how WDIC is best positioned to support that work. But did I miss anything from others of you guys who have been directly involved in these?
So I'm just thinking back on Travis's initial question about breaking down that data more into those subsets. And if I remember part of the survey, it was optional to answer those. So even if we had it, I don't know how full it would be. With that being voluntary, I think a lot of people may have skipped it for whatever reason. And I don't know why, but I feel like the numbers would be tough. And I don't think there's another way to ask. You have to make that voluntary, so. Mm-hmm.
What I think about the role of this, I mean, many of the staff that are involved on WDIC have naturally been a part of a lot of the teams and the efforts around the survey implementation and the follow-up. And once again, I think the legislators who are involved on WDIC could play a leadership role on if we proceed with the same structure for the workplace climate survey for 2025, then you all could be part of that leadership team that kind of sets the parameters and answers some of those questions around how do we want to do it? Do we want to continue to subcontract this? Do we want to be able to break the results out by those different demographic categories And to answer that question, if we hadn't in the past, why didn't we? Is it because we didn't collect it or we didn't have a robust pool of answers there? So those sorts of decisions.
A small question, do we have patterns in whether, not necessarily demographic, but even by like department or job, and who just did and didn't respond at all to the survey? I assume not off the top of your head, but that's something I'd be interested in.
What I do know is for smaller departments and those that had responses, we'll say under 5 or under 10, those responses weren't broken out to have specific departmental responses, so that you couldn't, by their answers, identify any one person who responded. So like in the county attorney's office, we don't have responses for them, but we had them for COFA. That may have been one of the smallest departments that we got responses for. And then, yeah, so I think that we were probably able to tell by department who responded. Was it? Okay. You have a good memory, Rachel.
Sorry, you said it was optional to say like,
Which department? Yeah, and I know I heard from a lot of employees that they weren't comfortable saying what department, because they were like, this is supposed to be anonymous, and if we identify what department we're in, it's not as anonymous, especially if you're in a small department.
right, like if you answer a question about my supervisor and you say you're in the like whatever department, like, well, that only has one supervisor or 2 or something.
Yeah.
I imagine, because I don't know, I assume it'd be different in something like DSS or the health department or the sheriff's department that have more folks.
Sure. Now it's coming back to me a bit too, because there were narrative responses that people could provide too, and that the role of that third-party collector was to make sure that those were anonymized. So if someone responded, you know, my supervisor Lisa Holmes is a real whatever, like that, you know, they could anonymize or that if someone revealed information about themselves that made them easily identifiable, it's more like that they would anonymize, so that it couldn't get back to that, be traced back to that individual.
When people turn in a survey, they do it digitally, I'm assuming?
We did it, yeah, most of them were digital, and then there were some that did paper surveys, and they were sent to a non-county address. I think it was sent to Chicago or what have you, in a postage paid envelope.
I don't remember how we do it with the city. I know we don't put our department, but when the surveys are all turned in, the department head knows the percentage of folks that turned them in from their department. And I don't remember how they know that, but they know. So, you know, GIAC might have had 96%, another department 48%. But it's not asked on the form, but somehow it's known. Maybe it's because of the emails, I'm not sure. Or the number is, I'm not sure how it's known, but it's known, which is helpful.
Yeah, interesting. Something else that, another component of this, and this is why it's a pretty big undertaking to do it, at least to the extent that we've done it in the past, was when we got the results. What I just showed you were the organization-wide results, and then for those departments that we had enough response that we were able to break down, we provided those responses to the departments, to the department heads, and someone from county administration would go and present those results at a departmental staff meeting, so that people could see those results within their department and, you know, see the summaries and what that, you know, what those results could mean for their department. So that was another big thing that employees, you spend a lot of time filling this out and you want to see the results, and you want to see how your department stacks up against the rest of the county, whether the morale in your department is better on average or worse on average, and if it's, what are you going to do about it? So there was a lot of time spent on those types of things as well.
I'm curious if other folks on the committee had their own things to add or toss into Travis's questions to Lisa. About like what's been the most impactful since 2018, what got started and dropped and what never got started that would be good. Kate?
It's not so much for me, I came in 2019, so I was able to participate in the values committee, which I was really appreciative of, but this survey was done before I came on, but I do know that since then there were a lot of things done as a result of that, and that as an employee was a good thing for me to see. It made me feel like we actually have a voice and we care and can move the needle in some places. I think moving forward, one of the things that for me as an employee, as a department head, would be very useful is just continue to have access to trainings that would continue to develop my understanding and making those accessible to the staff around us. I think it's really easy to get lost in the day-to-day of things, and I think this is really important. I think we talk about it a lot, but I think practical, hands-on ways we can actually make changes and then measuring those changes over time, I think would be very beneficial.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have, I guess, examples or memories of trainings you found particularly helpful, or like ways that a training was offered that was particularly effective?
It's not necessarily DEI centered, but it was a couple things. When I came on, department heads were getting mentors, and Pat Bouchel was my mentor at the time. And I found that very useful. Unfortunately, she retired shortly after I started, so it was kind of short-lived, but I liked the premise of the idea. I think it could be really beneficial. I think that was good. And then figuring out how to do an evaluation and understanding the importance of evaluations, I think was really helpful, and being able to work with HR because Lisa's right, all of our departments are so different. Having one system, one tool, just it's not practical. It's really problematic in a lot of ways, and so being able to to either use theirs or create one that you could work with them to tailor and make sure that you were hitting the things I found very important and useful. And I know my colleagues at the time also felt the same way. So.
Thank you. This reminds me, Lisa, this is going to be like the 5th time I've asked you this, but time-wise in the implementation of the new performance evaluation structure, where are we in, and I'm thinking of in like by, I don't know, suppose employees are taking a climate survey in like mid-2025 or even late then. At that point, like what will like average Joe employee, non-supervisory employees' experience have been with the standardized and values incorporated performance evaluations?
Everyone should have had one by then, and that was the overarching goal in 2023, and the training was conducted in 2023 by HR for supervisors, and so we've just gone through a round of department head performance dialogues where all department heads were asked, did you succeed in this goal for your department? And if not, why not? And how will you go about succeeding in 2024? So by 2025, that would be the expectation. I'm looking at Rachel. So not every department head reports to the county administrator. There are elected department heads, and then there are department heads who are direct reports to the legislature. So, for those for those department heads, they don't come through the performance dialogue with county administration. They would come through either the legislature or they don't receive performance reviews.
What happens regarding the performance evaluations that say like a directly elected department head's employees? Let me start that sentence over. Consider a directly elected department head. Does HR still have, or is there oversight on what sort of performance evaluations that department head and their their direct reports who supervise others give to their employees?
Yes, if those, if performance evaluations are conducted, all of those documents would reside in the HR department, or they should, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing to that. When the policy was approved and they provided samples to use, they gave department heads a choice to use the sample or continue using one that they've been using or make their own. But they did have to go through an approval process. And I know that the ones that we used in the county clerk's office, they were not from the sample. We used the sample to sort of incorporate that into what we used. But we got really great feedback from Ruby and HR when we sent that to her to help us get it more the way that, she wanted it and thought that it was more in line with the policy.
Okay. Cool, thank you. And if anyone doesn't know, the county clerk is directly elected, so that's one of those departments. Any other comments or suggestions or things to throw out about climate surveys? I have a couple stray comments here that I wrote down when, I think it was when Lisa, you were answering one of Travis's questions and talking about employees from different departments connecting and engaging with each other. And these aren't ideas, just things I think are true. One is, at least I have the impression, but you should check with the departments, that the assessment department and the IT department are kind of friends with each other on a department basis. And I think this is please correct me if I'm wrong, Jay and Lauren or anyone else, but I don't know who watches these. And I think that, it helps, I'm sure, because they're in the same small building, whereas other departments are spread out over many places. I say this with a lot of love, but those are, I think, two of the nerdiest departments, and I hope they can get on great regarding that. But if or when there's other examples of where employees somewhere are I don't know, have good relationships as opposed to kind of no relationship with other departments, that could be something to try to learn from. Also, I am pretty sure that not all county employees know that the county has a legislature, which is hard. At our big table, we like to think that we're the center of everything and we get to make all the decisions at the end of the day, which to some extent is true, but I have definitely met county employees in the wild, and then if I say, find out what they do, and then I'm oh, I'm one of the county legislators, and they're oh, what does that mean? Or, oh, where do you legislate? And I think that all the legislators should know that. I'll make a note. Nick?
That reminds me, along with, I think it was Kate who mentioned the suggestion of just like increasing, I know that Kate had mentioned this from like a supervisor perspective, but the increasing of like training availability and access and just options, I swear these are connected. It made me think of when I was a county employee, and I was with Workforce Development, and a number of us went to a training with the Mental Health Association, not Tompkins County Mental Health, but the Mental Health Association. That was a mental health wellness toolkit, kind of like working. It was meant for service providers, and at that training, it was an in-person, like hands-on, tangible, like some of the words that Kate was putting out there, genuinely like a really interactive training. And there were folks from city, there were like Ithaca Youth Bureau folks, there were DSS employees. Like it was not just folks from my department. It was like open to, I don't know if necessarily open to the public, but kind of something that open to providers in the area. And I just really thought that was awesome to be able to like meet other folks working in sort of similar departments or similar, like, I guess, goals. And I like very, very, very strongly remember being able to like put a face to a name from emails that, you know, oh, this is somebody who we email regularly with DSS. Oh, hello, nice to meet you. Like we're having lunch and doing a training together. And it was also like in a central location as well. Easy to get to and accessible, right? So I just kind of being reminded of something like this as a way to like bond. And from that point, I personally felt like myself and the workforce employees who were there, we had like a closer connection, not only with one another, but like with those folks from the other departments. And yeah, I just, another positive, just positive reinforcement of the training modality and as a way to connect interdepartmentally. I think that word was correct.
Lisa?
Yeah, that's a great point, Nick. And just adding to that and back to what you were mentioning, Veronica, with ITS and assessment employees, the proximity of departments makes a big difference in the, you know, amount of time that you see someone or get to know them in the hall. And, you know, when we move to a center of government model where we have so many different departments under one roof, it will provide for a lot more of those interactions. And whereas right now, like, it would be very difficult for a highway department employee to interact much with a corrections officer. There's just not a lot of common ground there. So it's those kinds of departments that are harder to find interactions. When ITS and facilities are two departments that actually touch every single employee, or they go out to every single workplace. So everybody knows facilities staff, everybody knows IT staff because they come and help with your computers and stuff. And then something else that Nick reminded me of, trainings are really great opportunities for those interdepartmental connections. And like during the pandemic, when we switched to a lot of online trainings, like defensive driver training, which is an all-day event, and you have to go out and have lunch and so forth. We've switched mostly to online defensive driver training, which it's a lot quicker and easier, but you miss those interdepartmental connections that you get from people from every department going to those trainings. So.
Awesome. Thank you all. Any other things to share? Rachel.
I just have one last thing. I'm just looking at this and I see there were 8 open-ended questions, and I don't even remember what those questions were. So as we get into talking about what we might want to do differently or how to improve this next time, I'd like to figure out what those open-ended questions were too. And I think I have them somewhere because we had them as part of the implementation team. We were given some documents that I'm pretty sure included what those were. So I'll see if I can.
It sounds like taking a look at just like what the survey itself was would be helpful for all of us. Lisa, you said something about this earlier, and I don't remember what, or are you going to find that for us, or do you know where?
I have the survey instrument. It just was a lot of attachments to include and go over, but I'd be happy to include that as a follow-up for our next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, anything else about climate surveys? I'm sure we'll discuss both the next one and ideas from everything we heard today, much, much more. Moving on, last thing, are there any committee members' reports or announcements about anything WDIC related? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn? Travis moves, Kate seconds. All in favor, raise your hand. All right, we're adjourned. I don't think we have to do that, but I kind of like